What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Wars in the Stars, episode number 81. This week is a She Hulk episode number one review. And just some announcements before we get going. I don't know what's up with the podcast. I move into college next week. So I think for at least for me, I'm going to take a break. I don't know what we're gonna do yet. We'll discuss that. If you don't see us for a month, you know why. So it just is what it is. Um, yeah. So this might be our last show for a little bit. Who knows? Who knows? So I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, Alex, how are you doing today, my man?
I'm very tired. Just got off of
Same.
work like 10 minutes ago, off of a very shitty meeting with my manager, and then I had a long day at school.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally get that. 100% get that. I
But
almost forgot
yeah,
to watch the episode today. Almost totally forgot it came out.
no, I tried all day, but the Disney Plus mobile app doesn't work.
Really?
Yeah, I was not able to get to work at school, so I had to come home and watch it. But I thankfully got to go to work 30 minutes late today, so I was able to watch it comfortably, not speed eat my food and all that.
Nice, 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 very nice. Okay, so give your give your general thoughts. What do you think?
I think this was an amazing pilot episode. I really liked it. Really liked it. I literally couldn't stop thinking about it while I was working.
Really?
It was so good. So good. Like,
Now, I'll
oh no,
continue.
you go.
For me personally, I watched it. I was like, this is okay, and I just got done rewatching it before we came on air. I was like, I like this a lot more now. I mean, I think it's good. I think it's like
Mm-hmm.
solid, very solid. Um, I have no major gripes with the show. I will say the one big problem I have is it has nothing to do with Bruce and Jennifer. I think their dynamic is fantastic. Uh,
Amazing.
it has to do with the whole Titania fight. I think that's like one of the worst shot and worst edited things I've ever seen in
Mm-hmm.
my life.
It wasn't.
It
It was.
is.
It wasn't the greatest,
It was
especially because that
bad.
that shot from the trailer of her busting through the wall is one of the most marketed shots, and it's one of the worst fights.
It just it randomly happens. It's like at the end of the episode, it appears that that fight was going to be longer, but they cut it weird. So like Jennifer is standing in one place and then she gets to another place with a cut, saving the jury from getting the bench thrown on them. And then she kicks Titania and that's it. That's the end of the fight.
Yeah.
It was just like I would have been fine if the episode literally just ended with her leaving Bruce and then her explaining, "Yep, I'm going into I'm gonna be my lawyer. I'm gonna win this case," and then the episode ends there. I didn't need the whole fight because it just felt so weird and so abrupt. I will
Yeah.
say the CG looks a little bit better on She-Hulk.
I thought
I
it looked
think
like dramatically better, especially
it
from
did
that
look
first trailer.
it did look better. I think now I don't know if this is a purposeful thing, but the skin tone, the coloration is different than Bruce's, so it
Yeah.
just seems a little off-putting still sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Which he's in certain shots, it doesn't look great, but like it looks
Yeah.
substantially better than it did. When we saw the first trailer, it just looked
Oh
like
yeah.
she was in a 2004 PlayStation 2 video game. It just
Yes. Yes.
it looked a lot better. Um, I thought the performances were really good.
Yeah.
From everyone. And it sets up a lot for Bruce and Jennifer. Will also say, sick and tired of the whole. Can we stop with Tony? Can we stop? Like, literally, does every single Phase 4 project have to reference him?
It felt good here though. Like
It did. It
it
did.
felt warranted here.
I
Like
thought the.
I liked it. I like especially at the end of the episode when she starts carving in her initials.
Yeah.
I thought it was really funny.
It's a nice, like, homage. It's a nice little
Yeah.
touch for sure. I get that. I get that for sure. But it also feels like every Phase 4 project. Really?
Yeah, yeah. No, I get
Uh
you. I get you.
yeah. So let's get into the episode. Uh Obviously our least favorite part was probably that fight. Just poorly
Yeah,
shot, edited.
yeah,
And I mean it really doesn't take you out of the episode because it's at the very end, just like I mean the last scene you remember is the end. So it's like, really? We had such a and I felt as I watched the episode the second time, I'm really, really enjoyed this. And we got to that, I'm like, that's horrible. That's terrible.
yeah.
It's shot like it's just poorly shot, poorly edited. Um, and I will also say on my first watch, I wasn't a huge fan of the Hulk and Jennifer fight.
Yeah.
Then on second watch, I was like, it's okay, it's fine, it works
I
for
was
me.
I was having a blast with it, especially because you like, the thing is with Smart Hulk, as he calls it. Um, it's not a thing where he completely got rid of the Hulk personality. You see it shine through a lot when he's fighting Jennifer.
Right.
You hear like the it sounds like unfortunately it took like almost the exact same snippet of audio from like the 2012 Avengers movie or Age of Ultron or Thor Ragnarok, and you can kind of hear some of it.
Hmm.
And so, you know, I I had a lot of fun with with that fight personally.
Yeah, I get that for sure. Like on my rewatch, I enjoyed it a lot more. Like it showcased again, how powerful like the Hulk himself could be. I know it's not fully the Hulk, but it also showcased a little bit of Jennifer's powers. So I thought it worked really well, establishing her and her power set. I think my favorite part of this episode, we can discuss what our favorite part was. Is as much as I really enjoyed Jennifer's story, I also really enjoyed the characterization of Bruce, and even it's through dialogue of from Jennifer Walters. She talks about the fact that Bruce has been through a lot of trauma, right? He kind
Yeah.
of suppresses it. He's been lonely, but he does it. He says because he's a hero. That's a sacrifices heroes have to make. We also see like how his relationships with the Avengers affect him, right?
Mm,
It's kind of hinted at or not explicitly stated, but it's always hinted at that Tony and Banner were close. Like Banner was the mediator of the Avengers, right? You had Cap's ideals, and then you had Tony's
yeah.
ideals, and Bruce was always the mediator. So it was really interesting to see. It's not shown, but it's told to us about how close Bruce and Tony were. I mean, Tony built all of that equipment for Bruce during the blip, so that was really cool and neat.
Yeah.
Um, we know about his struggle. It's told to us, but since we haven't gotten a solo Hulk project because of the Universal stuff, it's you have to explain that in an Avengers film, which is really hard to do because you're trying to characterize all of these characters, all of the Avengers, and establish a villain usually. So it was nice to learn about Jennifer, but also get a glimpse into the Hulk's mind during the past 10 years and now, up to now. How is he dealing with this trauma? Where is he as a character? Obviously, we know how he got into human form. We know how he fixed the arm now.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, really interesting, I think, characterization with Bruce and the Hulk. Uh, and I feel like now we're at a point, though, with Professor Hulk. Well, I think he works really well with this type of show, right? Because it's a comedy and he's meant to be funny.
Yeah.
I think we're at a point now, and we'll discuss what we think the Sicarian spaceship means. But like, we're at a point now where I just want rage mode,
Yeah.
and I thought we were gonna get it.
Mm, I think the way that the show should go is it's just like again, Banner is scared of the Hulk taking over again. And then I think that's how like maybe in the finale or something, Bruce lets the Hulk take over.
Right.
Oh, I could just imagine it. I could just imagine it. Um yeah, I think my favorite part of the episode was that Bruce and Jennifer dynamic. It was so good. The comedy was there. I love the running gag. The way that I texted you that I'd finish the episode is Captain America fuck. Like,
I think
oh
that's my favorite post-credit scene of all time now.
literally. We always make jokes about the Hawkeye post credit scene of Rogers the musical being like, ha, that's funny. This is genuinely the funniest post credit scene of all time.
Right.
I loved it so much. It was so good, so good.
Now, my question is, which one do you think it's Peter Quill's grandmother that he got down with the lady? You know who I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, Meredith.
Yeah, it's definitely her.
I don't think it was her. I don't know.
I think it's definitely her.
That's crazy though. And I also like that was like the I like that was like the running gag of the entire episode was her trying to get out of Bruce that Captain America fucks. So
I love how emotional she was too about it. Like she felt
I
so
know.
genuinely bad for Steve. Like, look at that ass, that
I
ass.
yeah, it's funny though.
I was dying laughing.
I know. And just this episode was just so good, and I honestly think like I have 3 things about this episode I wasn't a big fan of, personally speaking. Some of the stuff was I wasn't a fan of kind of Jennifer during some of her Hulk time when she was with Bruce. And I think that was kind of the point, was oh, look at how hypocritical she is right now. But some of it was just hey, yo, bro, you're coming off as super unlikable right now. You're just you're an angry dickhead half the time. But and I think the other thing that I wasn't really a fan of was how short the episode was. I mean, the episode was 39 minutes long, so about 35 minutes worth of content.
Right.
And again, the end fight didn't need to happen. I think if anything, it would have been a good thing to open episode 2 with.
Right.
It's not a really great fight or anything. But I mean, hey, still, it's something.
It just felt so weird. It just felt weird, out of place.
Yeah. And so I don't know. I think that is what I would probably say is my whole thing, is just I felt the pacing was a little off throughout the episode.
Yeah.
We open into the show with we're just, everybody knows. Basically is what happens is her family knows, her friend knows, all of that. And it's just yeah, I'll give it that it was a bold move to do, but I don't know if I would have chosen to go that route.
So. I actually would disagree with you. I think it worked for the style and the state of the show, and I think the show gets to its point right away, and it establishes her as She-Hulk in one episode. I think a lot of times what these MCU Disney Plus shows struggle with is origin stories. We don't see the origin of Moon Knight until what, episode 5? We don't see him become Moon Knight until episode 5. And again, it works in the case of Moon Knight. That's how the story was structured. But I kind of like getting that starting point where we could unravel from there, right? When you just drop us in with the character, you don't understand their struggles. It's almost like you putting a puzzle together. So I think it was a really smart choice to have the origin be one episode. Just get straight to the point of when she becomes She-Hulk. How does she deal with this? This whole episode, we answer the question. And you can obviously tell this is written like a television show.
Yes.
We have a question.
Things to actually feel like it.
And we have an answer. It's not an elongated story that needs to be answered in 9 episodes where you're going to get an episode you're not going to like. and then you're gonna get one that you really love. It's not meant to be a movie. It
Oh,
has
yeah.
question, it has answer, and then it has sort of a cliffhanger that I think like the episode could have just ended on Titania just smashing through the courthouse. Episode ends,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So it does what a television show does. It answers a question. It answers a question that we have beginning the episode. How did she become She-Hulk? Answers that. Gives
Yeah.
us her whole origin, and it really worked for me because it got straight to the point. And now you can have fun.
Yeah. I will also say something I wasn't a massive fan of is like we didn't like get a villain until the end of the episode, and we didn't get anything about this villain. I always say I think Arthur Harrow is the just baseline standard of what a villain should be. He's not someone who's just like crazy, like, oh, he's out to kill half the universe. But we get established very, very early on. This dude's a bad guy. And so, my thing would have been maybe I wish we would have got, something about what's her name? Tatiana?
Yes.
And so
Or Titania.
Titania, sorry.
Yeah, I always mess it up too.
And so that's what I would have liked. We do like our origin stories for these villains.
Yes.
Not at the end of the series, hopefully. So yeah, that's what I would kind of say my thing is just like I was hoping we would get a little bit more with her, which kind of goes into the shorter episode length. I wish it was longer.
Yeah, I get that. I get that for sure. I mean, we gotta think about though. The only show that's really comparable to this that's 9 episodes is WandaVision, and WandaVision's first episode was shorter. I mean,
Yeah.
WandaVision's first 2 episodes
Yeah.
were shorter.
I will say to that though, is WandaVision's first episode, Hook episode, was really good. Like you
Right.
straight up, you like the show. It didn't reveal anything. It didn't do any of that. It kind of just threw you in like you were supposed to already know what's happening.
Right.
And so with this, I feel like they kind of sort of went with that, but then also maybe kind of sort of didn't. But yeah, I mean, I really like this first episode. I think Jen is a super, super likable character. So yeah, again, I'm a big fan of the show. I think the show for me really hit off with like wow, this is gonna be a fun show. I was really surprised that they didn't in the first episode use Daredevil. I was really surprised.
Really, you thought he was gonna be first episode type of thing?
Because you need that hook. You need that thing to get people excited to come back. And I was really surprised they didn't pull that. They didn't pull that on us.
Yeah, I definitely think he's a mid-season to late season thing for sure.
He'll be.
'Cause I feel like we got to deal with the Abomination stuff still. I feel like I don't know what I still don't, I have no idea what he's doing here. Assume it has something to do with lawyering, with the law. But to go back to this episode, I did hear some complaints about the pacing, and it's something I felt the first time I watched. But the second time, I'm like, okay, it's better. It's still not paced greatly, I don't think, but it works. I love, sometimes the best things are simple things. And I think this episode was just simple in its structure. It really worked. It didn't try to deviate too much from the course. It just told the origin story. And for the show itself, I think the origin story works, right? Because if we did the whole thing about, what is it in the comics? He gets in an accident and then gets shot or something like that.
Who?
Jennifer. And then Bruce has a blood transfusion.
Yeah, she gets into some sort of accident, and Bruce has to give her a blood transfusion, and that's how she becomes a Hulk.
Yeah, now, I don't know. I think in the case of the show, I am fine with the deviation from the comics origin. I mean, it's kind of weird, right?
Yeah.
Just they get in an accident, and blood drops, and then
Yeah, and
she becomes
you'd also think though Bruce wouldn't be able to bleed because of the Hulk skin, even with
right.
his thing on.
Yeah,
So also it'd be a thing like if you're in such a state where you're so strong, you're impenetrable, you're basically unkillable, why would you want to come out of it? That'd be my whole thing
right,
is like he said that he looked at the Hulk now as a cure. So you're not looking at the Hulk as a bad thing anymore.
right.
So like then why come out of it?
Yeah, I also what I really liked about that opening scene is how they establish how Jen is really confused about her powers as She-Hulk. It's almost like a
Yeah.
transformation of somebody turning into a werewolf or something like that. It echoed uh weirdly enough Morbius, and it
Yeah.
echoed Venom, right? When Tom Hardy as Eddie Brock would transform into Venom the first few times. Like a terrifying monster was coming out. But as we learn, she's able to control her, right? They're not two different personalities. Like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
they're essentially the same. She just becomes bigger and green. So that's
Yeah.
essentially all, right? So I thought that was really interesting. Also, Bruce coming to terms with the fact that, um, you know, he kind of got one upped. This man, she didn't have to go through 10
Yeah.
years of training.
10 years.
Uh,
Yeah, like 10 years, and then like trauma, and then having to come to terms with your alter ego. Nope, Jen just got it from the start. She knew how to deal with it already.
right, and
She's
I
a
think
lawyer.
that the real world explanation for that was really good, right? Like
Yeah.
she's a woman in a field that's been statistically and predominantly dominated by males, and she's had to deal with male ignorance, I guess you could say, in her field,
Yeah.
microaggressions, right? And she's learned to kind of control or summon her feelings, bottle her feelings down. Uh, but now it's harder to do, right? Because even if she bottles them down, like Bruce talks about, like just you being briefly angry could cause the destruction of the
Yeah.
entire world if she really wanted to, if she got super angry. Um, so I thought the real world explanation was really really good for that. Um, and yeah, I will say I do like this first episode. I am worried though because to me, what carried this first episode was the chemistry between Bruce and Jen.
Yeah.
Bruce is not going to be in every single episode, so when we
Yeah.
lose that element, how does everything work, right? Because not every character can be comedic. Like I think now going to go into the fact that she's going to become an attorney for superheroes or villains or anti-heroes or whatever, and I think the first person she has is going to be Abomination, right?
Hmm.
How do you make the Abomination like a comedic character like they're going to? Because it'd be very odd. It'd just be very
Yeah.
odd. So I'm very curious to see how they play this.
Yeah.
Um,
And I will say to that point though of the abomination thing, because I know a lot of people are upset about the abomination sounding like Tim Roth. My thing is you guys didn't care about Abomination before the show. Don't act like you cared about him the entire time. My thing, he was awful in the Incredible Hulk. I'm okay with him changing his personality. He didn't have one. So um yeah, I'm fine with it. My thing with any show is I might not like it in concept, but I'm gonna always try and give it a fair shot. And I want to see how they do Abomination. I really do. I really do. I want to see how they can make him work, basically.
yeah, yeah. Obviously, I agree with that. Um, because in the Incredible Hulk, he's just kind of
Oh
the
God.
antithesis of Hulk.
Yeah.
It just there's no
Yeah.
real character to him. It does worry me a little bit. Like I don't need Daredevil can crack jokes, right? I mean, we talked about it the other night. Like in the comics, Daredevil wears a sweater to a
Yeah.
Christmas party that says, "I'm not Daredevil."
Yeah.
So like, I'm sure like Charlie Cox's Matt Murdock is gonna crack some jokes for sure. But like, I don't need the whole like. I just don't need like a whole episode of it. I need him to do something badass still, right? He is Daredevil after
Yeah.
all. He is what Kevin Feige proclaims as like him and Spider-Man being the leader of the street level heroes, right? We need to see a little bit of badassery from him in the courtroom and in the street. Um, so yeah, I just worry, how they gonna handle this, right? Because I feel like we both agree that the Bruce and Jennifer dynamic was really strong, and I would
Yeah.
to go far as say as obviously I think this is Bruce's best performance as Professor Hulk. If I were to
Yeah.
choose which one, She-Hulk or Endgame, it would
Yeah.
be She-Hulk because it just works in the context of the show better. And I would go as far as to say that like probably the Hulk's third best performance behind Avengers and Ragnarok.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge fan of him in Age of Ultron. I don't like the whole Natasha thing. Sorry.
No, I get you. I get you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is definitely the favorite I've ever seen of Banner. Maybe apart from First Avengers.
Right.
He's always just been like that guy who's just like, man, he would be really interesting if they made another solo movie over him.
Right. Yeah. He's kind of got the like opposite thing of Thor. Like I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, he's arced out. I mean, but with the Hulk, he's been around. Obviously we have Edward Norton's Hulk that's still MCU canon. It obviously is because they're gonna reference it a lot in the show.
Yeah.
But we've taken such a deviation, obviously, with the actor and the character. It's been what was that released in 2000? It's been 13 years,
Yeah, 2008.
and it's like there's been really no. I mean, there's
Mention
been
of it.
character development, but it's either been off screen or it's been lightly referenced. So like it's due time, especially if you're going to keep him around in the MCU.
Yeah.
For him to get something now. Let's get to it. Let's get to our little theory time. What do you think's up? What do you think the Sicarian ship is? What do you think is up here?
Well, didn't they say it was his cousin?
No, they said it was a Sicarian courier ship. Probably said in a message.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And Bruce needs to get to the bottom of it.
Correct.
Oh God, who do I think that was? You go first because I got to think real hard about this.
Now, I truly think that they are setting up World War Hulk. Now, I truly think that something. Listen, Disney got a deal done with Sony to get the rights, at least to have Spider Man in the MCU, for Sony to then have solo Spider Man films that take place within the MCU. And it's been very, very profitable for both Marvel Studios and Sony, right? It's worked.
Yeah.
I think Universal's got to realize they got to do the same thing with the Incredible Hulk, right? They've given up enough rights where he can appear in MCU properties, but they just can't necessarily do a solo film because of distribution. I think either that contract has expired with Universal, or Disney has at least bought the rights or something. Because I read an article here recently that Universal's contract of owning the rights exclusively was ending here around 2025.
Yeah.
So I definitely think they are setting up something for a Hulk, right? Because this doesn't feel like something they'd be setting up for Secret Wars, because it'd just be weird if he went on a ship and then
Yeah.
Kane invaded Earth and then he had to come back. So it's definitely not something for Secret Wars. But I definitely think it is something for World War Hulk. And I think what they're going to do is there needs to be something that reinvigorates the Hulk to take it over again, right? We haven't seen that since Ragnarok, obviously. And I think what that's going to be is, I think Bruce's son, Scar, from the comics is going to come. And I think this is just going to light a flame within the Hulk, and the Hulk persona was going to come back out, and
Yeah.
Scar and Hulk are going to go off somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Or they could go with the storyline at the end of the show that he does something so bad that like the Avengers or even Jennifer or somebody Juan like launches him into space with Scar because that's what they do in the comics. The Illuminati is so afraid of him, they launch him into space,
Yeah.
and then his rocket blows up, and then he comes back to Earth and he goes crazy. So I think they're gonna do something along those lines, and it would be a really interesting thing. Obviously in Infinity War, right? Hulk is the one that alerts the Avengers on Earth about Thanos. It'd be
Yeah.
really interesting that if in the Kane dynasty, while Kane's coming down, instead of him uh invading or helping, I should say, the Avengers, he's
Yeah.
kind of a nuisance that they have to deal with while Kane's invading, and this could
Yeah.
lend to the idea that Kane uh still has some, uh grasp on the timeline, and he's making things difficult for our version of the Avengers. I think that would work really well.
Yeah.
So like I
And
think
yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say what I think could be happening is I think a big popular theory that a lot of people buy by is that He Who Remains and Kang and all of them had to have people like Tony Stark and Odin and all these people die so that he could make his move. He wouldn't have those people to go against him. And I think one of the other big threats is not only Bruce Banner, but the Hulk. And I think maybe Mr. Kang the Conqueror is writing a sacred timeline where Hulk won't be in the equation, or Bruce won't be in the equation, but the Hulk will. Not Smart Hulk, but the Hulk, or
Right.
the Incredible Hulk. So that is what I am thinking. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm really interested though. I really think it's gonna be Scar because I don't see anybody else. Like, why would the Grandmaster come back? Like, I mean, I would get it, but like, I think it makes the most sense to set up him having a son. I think that would be again really interesting for the character, kind of similarly to Thor, right? Like they're at the point now where they've been in the MCU for 13 years plus. You've
mm,
kind of like written yourself into a box. You can't do the same thing with those characters over and over again because they become stagnant. So like adding a child to the equation would be really interesting. How would
yeah,
Bruce deal with that? Um, you know, how would Bruce react? Because Scar is a lot more like the Hulk than compared to She-Hulk and Hulk, right? Because as we see in this episode, Jennifer and Bruce deal with them being Hulks very differently.
yeah.
So I'd be really curious to see that dynamic. But who do you think it is? Do you think it is his son or
I think it's gonna be maybe his son, or why not Amadeus Cho?
really?
Why not? Why not?
Ha! I
Why
like
not?
that.
Why not? Why not bring in Mr. Amadeus?
I like that theory. I like that theory a lot. Do like that theory. Um. So, there's a couple other things I want to touch on. So, obviously the Tony stuff we briefly touched on, but I thought it was again we've touched a little bit on Bruce's character. I thought it was the most impactful thing for Bruce's character, right? Just reestablishing the fact that he was really tight with certain Avengers. Obviously, one being Tony. Um,
Hmm.
Obviously both being the Science Bros. So that finding out that during a tough time like that they spent time with each other. And it was a nice little Easter egg. I didn't even realize this. Jennifer and Bruce throughout the entire episode wear shirts that are bands typically, and that was very much a Tony
Yeah.
thing. So those are probably all of Tony's clothing. Um, and yeah, it was just a really nice homage to Tony, and it just reestablished the fact of his importance in the MCU. Obviously, we know his importance, but also his importance to kind of keeping uh, Bruce in check being there for him as a friend, being the one who really only understood Bruce, right? They're both super geniuses, right? It was
Yeah.
hard for them to relate. Um, Tony, on one hand, was the outgoing, extroverted philanthropist, billionaire, playboy, while Bruce was more quiet and
Yeah.
reserved, right? So, like, but at the same time, Tony understood what he was going through because of their genius intellect. So, I really like that dynamic a lot, and I really like how they touched on that. It's something that's not really expounded upon in the Avengers film, so it's nice to have it expanded on here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really loved that. I really loved the fourth wall stuff. Obviously, a echo back and a callback to the comics. I also really love this show. Just does what it wants to do. It doesn't really have. It doesn't really try to be crazy with groundbreaking MCU story.
Yeah.
It just tells a simple story, and I think that's what the MCU needs to get back to. I think is just simple, basic, right? Sometimes I feel like they try to get too elaborate. Like what, for example, Eternals. Eternals tries to get too crazy, right?
Yeah.
And that's a problem when you build such a great cinematic universe. Is like you're always trying to top. You're always trying to get weirder, differenter,
Yeah.
and all that. I feel like this
Strive
getting
for.
back to the basics really worked for me.
Mhm.
Again, the show it doesn't look great. I mean, it looks fine. I should say it doesn't look great. There's some shots that don't look great.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, I think I would give this episode at first watch it was like a 7.5. I think now I'd give it like a solid, really solid 8.
Yeah.
A really
So
solid 8.
yeah, 8 to 8.5 is what I think. Again, I think this is good stepping off grounds. Yeah, again, I really enjoyed this episode. I think it is one of my favorite pilots from a Disney Plus show. I can't think of one that really had me like this invested.
Yeah,
Especially also after hearing all the people who went to the premiere, who watched the first 4 episodes, talking about how much everyone's gonna enjoy the show. So really excited.
yeah, yeah. That's always really interesting when we hear early reactions because, like, a lot of the times they are really positive, and that shouldn't come as a surprise because the MCU generally produces a good product, but also because of the fact that these people are fans of said product. So they're usually going to tend to enjoy it, right? They're
Mm.
usually positive people. They want to go out and have a good time. They're at a premiere. I think there's a lot of existential things that people don't realize with the premiere. When you're with a bunch of friends, you meet a bunch of new people. It's a good environment, so you're generally going to enjoy the product because of the experience you have. So it's sometimes difficult to get an unbiased point of view. So, when I heard the first 4 episodes were good, I'm like, okay. I hear a lot of people generally say most MCU products are good. So I'm like, we'll see. I'll just go into it. Um, I wasn't like on an anticipation scale. I was more excited for this than Miss Marvel, but less excited. Or I was more excited for Moon Knight than
Yeah,
this. So, like, I was
absolutely.
in the middle of the 3 MCU live action shows we've gotten so far this year. Uh, like, it wasn't something I woke up right at 3 a.m. for, and I think that helped me a lot
Yeah,
because I just enjoyed what I watched. It wasn't groundbreaking, mind blowing. It's written like a television show, which made me happy
yeah.
because that's what
Yeah,
MCU and Star Wars shows struggle with.
it actually feels written for TV.
Right.
It doesn't feel like a movie that's stretched out. Now, time will tell with these other episodes, but for a first impression, I think it's really good.
Yeah,
Really
I
good.
think it's
Really
gonna
excited.
work. I don't
Yeah.
think it's gonna be like top tier MCU, but it could be
Could
higher
be
tier for Marvel Television, or it could be middle of the pack MCU product, which I think would be good. And I think so far, if it keeps on this wave, it'll be a stronger Phase 4 project than most. So
yeah.
yeah, I just I enjoyed it. I didn't love it, but I really liked it. Say
Yeah.
really liked it. So I
Absolutely.
gotta ask, what do you think's up in episode 2? What do we think we get?
Maybe a first Daredevil or Matt Murdock appearance? No. No, I think more. I think we're gonna see more things of. I think we might see Abomination if we don't see Daredevil,
Right.
or Emil Blonsky. So I could see that. I could also um, maybe see some struggle with Jen with hulking out. Just because I want. Goddamn cat. I do want that to be like an actual struggle of the show that she's just not. Oh, I perfected it all. Go
Right.
happy, go happy, go me.
Yeah,
I
I
want to see
kind
some struggle. Hold on,
I
keep
k-
talking. I'll be right back.
yeah, I kind of want to see like her be almost self-conscious, like it's almost a body image type of thing, right? Uh Either she gets objectified because men think it's really attractive, or the media thinks that you can't be a lawyer if you're looking like a superhero, if you're looking like a Hulk. Like I'd like to see that dynamic. Like her image makes it harder for her to practice law, makes it more difficult for her to live a normal life, date, meet people. So I think that would be really interesting is like her struggling with her body image. I think that would be a really good like real world problem
Mm,
explained in a show. Like it affects how she's able to do her job and like her dating life, social life. So I think
yeah.
that would be an interesting thing to go because right now we don't have quite a struggle yet. I mean, we do have the real world struggle of women struggling in the law field,
Mm,
but for a expanded upon struggle that she has to overcome, it's like her image, how the outside views her as a Hulk.
yeah, I agree.
And I also don't think this is the type of show that's gonna have a villain per se. It's gonna have like
Villain of the week.
villain of the week, which works. That works for me. If
Yeah,
you're gonna do
if it's done right.
if it's done right, it works, right? I mean, The Mandalorian does it well, right? The Clone Wars, like stuff like that. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm definitely like my anticipation went up. So
Yeah,
I'll be more excited when the episode 2 drops next week.
yeah. Next
Uh
Thursday.
Next Thursday. Yeah. So we both give it 8s out of 10.
Yep.
You got anything else to say?
No, man. But this might be it for about a month.
Yeah, this might be it. Who knows? I move in this time next Thursday. I'll be in my dorm. I'm only like 30 minutes down the road. So if I ever wanted to come back home and do a show or wanted to do it in my dorm, I don't know. We'll see. So yeah. Um that's gonna do it for today's show because there's nothing else really to talk about.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's gonna do it for today's show. Thank you for listening to our discussion about She-Hulk episode number
Um,
1. Uh as always, may the force be with you. May you stay burdened with glorious purpose. And
Captain America fucked.
see you sometime. Peace out, everyone.